this interesting idea. So I had come up with built this world. I built this, had a chance to do all sorts of different things. I could have a superhero story. I could have an original superhero story. I could have sitcom style hijinks. I could have multiversal stories. I could have meta text for Sprite comics, and against a deluge from the webcomic community, which were totally approved. All these interesting ideas fail on launch. You know, obviously, a lot of it breaks down to I did not get. Here's the thing you need to know about Sprite comics, and I, in part one of this set. A lot of Sprite comics were exactly. Maybe they'll focus on other characters and their adventures, but basically they were variants of Bob and George. There weren't a lot of original stories, which concept of Tales of the Spriteverse kind of what I had too. But I developed the idea. Like I said, it became less fourth wall breaking comedy and more whole science fiction adventure thing. Fantasy elements. I thought I had some really good ideas. The problem is, I would not do a good enough job explaining this. And part of the reason was I didn't want to ruin this. I never got to the whole format war concept that I was talking about. A big reveal to Tronic's character as well as to the audience. So basically, he was Tronic's. Pardon my ripping. Just learn to understand his powers, and then later he would learn about this whole multiverse thing and how they tie into these format wars of old, which we would go back to now and then. I never got as far as explaining that. Because a lot of what I was going through in the comic was, look, I'm not aping Bob and George. Yes, I'm a little bit with some of the ideas. I didn't know the word metatextual meta back then. So, you know, didn't have that word to explain it, but I was trying to explain, no, I'm not comic. I am playing with some of those tropes, and I'm messing with them, but I'm approaching that from a completely different angle. This is the angle everybody else was doing. I was coming more off to the side and playing with these ideas and not necessarily being them, but kind of playing with them in a different way. You know, now I said, you know, it was rather meta. There were so many comics that were doing what Bob and George was doing that anything that even smelled like what everybody else was doing was immediately looked at as, oh, you're just another comic aping Bob and George, do something original. It wasn't able to get through without pretty much ruining my story. And the way I wanted to tell it was, I was trying to do something new. Whole universe, this whole concept, one of the things that took place in our comics, I didn't have an author. My character shared my screen name because I always wanted to use that name in a character. But shadowing the character was not the same as shadowing the forum member, shadowing the creator of the comic. Authors were not these cartoonists who would potentially copy a comic and cause trouble. They were this godlike race of beings called the Authorians, and they would be guiding the universe either directly or indirectly. They might, some of them might not even know they were Authorians. Mia. And if you don't know what that is, look into it, because of it, and the show is amazing. I want to see more. But good. But it was basically that concept. These people, there were people who didn't know they were authorians, being original authorians that weren't actually Sprite comic creators with their own Sprite comic and everything else. If I was going to do that, but I could have. But the point was, trying to do a crossover with some other comic. But most of the dimensions that I was going to create were going to be original ideas. There were going to be original realities, based on some loosely based on other comics and TV shows and whatever, and a lot of them original. Anything that I wanted to come back to again, in there, and he would be our kind of link to this other reality. And this was kind of the fun that I wanted to have with it. As far as that, what could I have done differently? And that's something, you know, differently. I'm never going to go back to this. I actually didn't consider this concept doing just a comic with that. Never transpired. I just never got into it because I wanted a comic where I could stories. Some of my favorite shows were stuff that I could go into and where they could have different kind of stories, like Doctor Who, Star Trek. One story could be, another story could be very dark, and one story could be more science fiction based. One could be somewhat fantasy based. Could be completely event driven. One could be. I wanted that freedom, and that's what Tales from the Spriteverse was going to offer me. But maybe I shouldn't have necessarily. Maybe I should have. As much as I would like to have, maybe I should have dropped Force concept altogether, or at least not had it been shades of heroes from other realities, create some original heroes. The Guardians of Spritopia and all that's not anymore. So now he's trying to go create these other teams and these other nexus points. So that would have caused less problems because there would have been no Mega Man. So I wouldn't have been accused of doing another Mega Man comic. I wouldn't have been accused of another, oh, look, it's Mega Man and Sonic hanging out together. Isn't that neat? Comics out there. I wouldn't have been accused of that. Spriteverse was probably my biggest failure, much as I really wanted to play with that. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe that's anything else. Mega Man to introduce Brainbot. Brainbot was supposed to be sort of Tronics' connection to. They thought Shadow Man was overpowered because he took out a few minions. Like, let me use this as an example. Conan Warriors. There is a cannon fodder minion who actually gives our heroes. He's got the threatening them, and he's doing this thing that threatens their lives. And the heroes have to try to overcome that. Every single minion since, none of them showed that kind of ingenuity or creativity or capability. The usual cannon fodder bad guys. Our soldiers were cannon fodder bad guys. So Trunks' battle was against the general. Supposed to be there for mostly for these other characters to fight and start setting up these other bodies. And there was really no way to explain that without just pretty much coming out and telling everybody, look, guys, here's my entire universe. Here's all the world building. Here's everything, every concept I already have, rather than this world that I was building through the story and through the characters. I had to do a whole separate chapter. Wayne is not overpowered. He actually has a lot of other limits. And there were still people who weren't buying it. Spriteverse might have been my first case. And been my biggest problem. Trying to find a way to explain the concept to them, too, but I couldn't figure out how to do it without organically set up this world and this universe, and I couldn't figure out how to do it without the story. So Spriteverse is so, and maybe even the name was wrong. Maybe I should have called it Tales from the Multiverse. That would have been. But Spriteverse was the title I went with. The meta concept that was the heart of these format wars was basically the heart of this whole series, and then and then all these other adventures were kind of this old event, but it failed to be able to people, and the thing fell apart. I had considered for its own story, Tales from the Spriteverse again as Tales from the Multiverse. We changed Tronix's alter ego name from Shadowwing, which is, like I said, a name of always wanted to use in a character, and made it something else, and done these other things, or maybe having Shadowwing as my screen name and other character to be able to use it in a character. But now, and later, I'm Shadowwing. I took the name Tronix in my screen name to set me apart from all the other people calling themselves going by Shadowwing on the internet. Vampires. And I'm not just a Shadowwing. I'm Shadowwing Tronix. Shadowwing is my title. Tronix is my name. Basically how I'm working it out. Just the whole concept is kind of a lost idea to me. I really have those stories in my head anymore. The format wars are gone. Tronix and his friends in that reality, this Spriteopia and all this other stuff, they're not in my head anymore. Just trying to explain everything without ruining the story just it stopped being fun for me to work on, so I dropped the comic. It's a disappointment because I loved those ideas. I loved an interesting way to have fun with this thing, but for whatever reason, you know, very things that were the very things that hurt me. So there were things that I could have done, but outside of dropping Spriteverse, it would have to be minor things because otherwise, the base of the concept for Tales from the Spriteverse would have been lost. And ultimately, the comic was lost. And that's just something I have to deal with. I have to move on with new ideas, new concepts, new projects. Even though I'm not creating stories in this reality anymore, so the is still kind of in the back of my mind. It's what could have been a really good idea was instead. Sorry that these went so long, but there's a lot to unpack in the history of Tales from the Spriteverse and its ultimate failure. Please stop listening to my voice and start reading stuff. Spotlight.com. You can also see the comic strip that I do now, Jake and Leon, informed on comics to come. And if you, sorry, I get sinus stuff on my nose. There are other people taking part in the Art Soundoff Challenge, Soundoff hashtag on Twitter. If you want to join us, you can go to artsoundoff.com. Until then, and I'll be able to talk in time to do one more Art Soundoff for the week. And I'll see you when I see you. And until then, I wish you, whether you draw, sprite, toy, or something else.